I'm seeing a lot of hip hop artists that get crazy attention. 3 months, 6 months, then the next year they're gone.
Right.
What are some of the reasons for that?
Well, I think the internet, I think we're living in a different era now to where buzz and hype and heat it's currency, and if you have that, it's very powerful, but it burns out, and that's a slot, it's like a wheel that rotates, and so that artist fills that slot, and they have this window of time to capitalize on their buzz and then take it further, because pretty soon that wheel's just going to turn again, and then it's somebody else who's going to fill that slot, And because the world is digitally driven now, that moves a lot faster. We cycle through artists a lot faster, which, it's good and bad, but it is what it is.
So when you talk about cycling through artists,
Yeah,
so them having a shelf life,
yeah,
but you've been on the shelf since 1990.
right.
That's a long time.
It is, I think it's because I started in a different era too,
Okay.
where that cycle was not as intense, and I think it was more about like when you hear old ball players talk about the fundamentals of basketball or the fundamentals of, any sport, it's like,
Right.
it was, when I was coming up, it was a real strong emphasis on the fundamentals of rapping and art and performing and so forth. And I think, we got so heavily invested in that early on that I think it just carried me my whole career.
Okay. And so we're talking about from a performance perspective, right?
Everything.
Okay, now let's speak specifically about performances, because I read that you are performing an average of 150 shows a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes more, sometimes less, but it's usually around that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a lot of the up and coming artists right now,
Yeah.
what is it about performing live that they should know in terms of its role or importance for career longevity?
Well, okay, so I'll just tell you what an OG artist told me when I was coming up. He was like, it doesn't matter how many records you sell, it matters how many tickets you sell, And that's like some of the best advice I'd ever gotten, Now, of course, it's important to sell records. I'm not saying that, but I think that at that time it was underestimated how important the live show was,
Okay.
So, and I think for a lot of artists now, it's, because because CDs and albums and music doesn't really sell anymore, I think, and you do get paid for your live show. I mean, obviously it's going to be a big part of your livelihood if you're a successful artist. And I don't care at what level you're at, if you're Jay-Z or you're the guy starting, the largest source of your income is likely going to be from live performance.
Okay, so you touched upon something that's really interesting, because with my work at San Francisco State, I deal with a lot of young artists, a lot of young students who want to be artists,
Right.
18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
And the mindset is that let's not even try to sell music. Let's just give it away.
Yeah.
Which is different than the era in which you grew up.
Right.
Can you talk about the pros and the cons of giving the music away versus trying to peddle it for profit?
Well, I think that, that is definitely a generational thing, and I see the value in giving certain things away. I see the value in selling others, So I think for an artist like myself, I try to do both, Certain things I give away because it makes sense to do that. The fans want it, and I think as long as it strategically leads to something that you're selling down the road, whether it be an album, whether it be your live show, whether it just be you, as a persona or whatever, I think it's always been like that in a certain way. Like even when we were first starting, when I was a teenager, we used to always give music away, but it was on vinyl and it was on 12
Right.
inch and so forth.
Right.
But, it was because you wanted people to get the album or you wanted people to buy into you as an artist down the line, So I think, but not as much obviously as today. Today I'm giving away far more than I ever did, which is fine. That's just the way the business is now,
But
So-
that kind of speaks to the buying into you part, and this is the branding conversation which comes up every time I'm doing a panel discussion, a lecture, or having a one-on-one conversation with people.
Yeah.
So the Lyrics Born brand, let's call it the LBB, right? Okay, so the LBB
Right.
with giving away the mixtape
Yeah.
or giving away any of the other items that help people to buy into you,
Yeah.
we're still using that strategically.
Yes.
So for these artists who feel as though, the young artists who feel as though just give the music away and
Yeah.
expect to get a return,
Right.
are they falsely mistaken?
Well, you have to give people something to get a return on, also. So you can't just give away music and then expect it to happen for you. I mean, you really have to be, you really have to be invested in your career so that, okay, you're giving away the music, then what? If you pique somebody's interest, what are they going to do with that? Can they come see you at a show? Can they come see more things online that are interesting about you? Are you working on an album? I mean, what is your story?
What are you seeing as some of the mistakes that artists are making that are not conducive to building career longevity?
Well, I think, again, it goes back to the fundamentals, and I think that a lot of artists, they're very focused on how they appear to other people. They're very self-aware in terms of how they appear to other people. Am I wearing the right thing? Do I look good here? Am I on Instagram? Am I this? That stuff is important too. But the fundamentals are what carry you through your career. How good is your live show? How good is your music actually? I mean, does it have lasting value? Are people going to be playing this 10, 20, 30 years from now? Are people going to come to your show and leave transformed? I mean, those are the kind of things, when I talk about the fundamentals, I think a lot of times people get caught up in how things appear, but again, when you make a really, really big investment in the actual art of it, that's what carries you your whole career.
When you think of an artist now who's coming out, who wants to develop a relationship, create an alliance, embark upon a joint venture, or possibly get signed, and they have some of the challenges that you had that were similar, what would you tell them about the pros and cons of being signed to a label now versus what the pros and cons were back then?
Well, I eventually did go on to sign with a large independent label, and that was great for a time. It was great for a time. But what I did start to realize is I didn't have as much control over, my actions. I didn't have as much control over my career once I did that. And, when you're an artist, you have this relationship with your fans. You have this relationship with your people that is very personal. I mean, they're used to having access to you. You're used to having access to them, in a very immediate way. And it's a very intimate relationship, And so when you introduce another agency into that equation, you have to make sure that it's going to enhance that relationship and not get in the way, or not alienate, these people that you work so hard, to be a part of and create that community with, you know what I mean? And that's what I started to see happening was that, I had a really big album with Later That Day, and then I signed, I got the biggest check I'd ever gotten in my life, I would have been nuts to turn it down, I was finally like, okay, great, this is what I worked so hard for. And I signed with this big independent label, and they were good people, they were doing their job, but they were in their business. They were not necessarily in the Lyrics Born business, you know what I mean? In the same way, And so what it did was I just didn't feel like I had access to myself. I didn't feel like I had access to this group of people that I had spent so long, giving music to and being, creating this community with, And at that point, I realized every artist needs to have their own company, whether it's large or small. Every artist needs to have some vehicle that they can use as either a launch pad, if nothing else, than a launch pad or a safety net.
There are many artists who will say, you know what, this is a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy invested in being on the internet. I'd rather be doing music. I'd rather be creative.
Yeah.
How important is it to have a team to help you utilize the resources?
It's absolutely essential. It's absolutely essential, more than ever, because today's artist wears way more hats than yesterday's artist, and probably the generation before me would have said the same thing, like Run DMC or, Eric B. and Rakim were probably saying, wow, Lyrics Born, you're doing way more than I ever had to do, and I'm saying, wow, HBK and Honor Roll and, so-and-so, you guys are doing way more than I ever had to do. But that's how the business evolves, that's how the business evolves. And so I think what's important for me now is I'm just one guy. There's only so many hours in the day. And at the end of the day, I still have to be focused on making sure I have a steady stream of music.
And you still have to have support.
And you still have to have support.
Gotcha.
Yes, absolutely. So you have to have, it's so important to be surrounded by really competent, enthusiastic, passionate people that love what they're doing. Right. That is so important, because I can't do it all. Nobody can, no person is an island,
Gotcha.
And so it is so important. And that's another thing that, if you really want longevity, it's like, I surround myself with people that are way better at doing these things than I ever could be, but it's because nobody can do my job. I'm the only one that can go into the studio and write those songs and, put those vocals down. And I'm the only one that can get up on stage and do that stuff, So that's where I need to spend the majority of my focus, otherwise it doesn't matter how many people you got around you. If you have nothing to give people, then because you're out doing other things or doing other people's jobs, then it doesn't even matter. But I think it's absolutely essential every step of the way. You really have to surround yourself with really high quality people, that believe in what you do. Right. And they're really willing to carry the torch.
Which brings me to my next question, which is probably one of the biggest quandaries that music artists have, hip hop artists have in particular in the Bay Area. They tend to find it difficult to find those highly qualified individuals you just spoke of.
Yeah.
So they employ friends,
right,
associates, who may not be as qualified, but they're certainly passionate about seeing that person succeed. Right. What's your take on that?
Well, I've had great experiences working with friends and family. I've had not so great experiences working with friends and family. I think it ultimately boils down to who can do the job best. That's what it ultimately boils down to. But yeah, I mean, we've all put people on, and sometimes it worked out, other times it didn't. And I think that you really have to pray for good people. You have to pray for good people.
That's how you do it. That's your strategy.
Right.
Pray.
Right. It's true though. It's so true. I mean, yeah, you got to vet people and this and that, but you really have to pray that you end up with good people, because it's everything. They're the ones that kind of move you forward, and carry your vision.
Yeah, I can understand.
Whether it's friends, whether it's family, yes and no. I mean, some people say it's a good idea. Some people say it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
I say, if that person is ultimately the best qualified and the best fit for you, then,
just like a company, cool. Just like an employee at a company.
That's exactly what it is. I mean, and we are, as artists, we are like small industries unto ourselves. I mean, I just thought about, yes, we're artists, but you really have to, today's artists, it's awesome. I mean, there's, like, I see the young guys, they're so entrepreneurial, they're thinking about their brand. What was a brand? We didn't know what a brand was, but they're thinking about, they've got ideas about how they want to be seen and put across online, and they're thinking about their gear, and they're thinking about their merch, and they're thinking about this, and that. We never thought that way, and I think today's artist is much more entrepreneurial, I think, than in previous generations. And I think that's a great thing. Like I said, as long as the fundamentals are there, I think
Right.
it's really awesome, to see.
Was it's really interesting. You mentioned the artists thinking about their brand and how they're presenting themselves to the world, and
Yeah.
in other words, articulating their value.
Yeah.
When I go to your website, I'm like, wow, this cat is serious. This cat is a professional.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate the way you have laid out and presented your brand and all the different elements of it.
The end game is what you leave behind. It's not what you put in your pocket, really. In my opinion, my philosophy is the end game is what you leave behind.
Wow. Michael Jackson was big on that. Michael Jackson said in an interview that everything he does, he's always thinking about how it's going to be embraced.
Absolutely.
After he's gone.
Absolutely.
So it gives a more emphasis to the importance of creating a stellar body of work.
Yeah, legacy. Legacy. I mean, that's
Wow.
For me. It's all about that. It's you and I walk the planet Earth like everybody else does. It's what we leave behind that make our existence special.
So are there songs on this new album on Real People that you have identified are specifically crafted for the purpose of music licensing?
No, I don't really look at music that way.
Okay.
I mean, I've been very fortunate with licensing,
Yes, you have.
But I don't look at it that way because I can't predict what somebody else is going to like
Interesting.
and is what's going to work for their campaign.
Right.
I can't predict that, So I just say to myself, of course it
If
comes
it happens,
through your
it
mind.
happens.
Yeah, and I say,
Okay.
okay, well, if what I've done in the past has been successful with licensing, then I'm just going to keep on doing what I'm doing. You know what I
Got
mean?
you.
And it's kind of, you can't really, I mean, how do I know what's going to work for Ivory soap commercial?
Or
Iris-
Motorola.
Right. How do I know what's going to work?
Or Coke.
Right.
Now, talk to me about Coke. How did that come about? Because in my mind, people have associated calling out
Yeah.
with Coke, and everybody heard just a quick soundbite,
Right.
and they were like, "Who is that?" How did that come about?
We got the call. I don't know. They liked the song. It worked with their campaign.
Okay.
I wish there was a deeper answer.
And the rest is history.
That's it. It's just like when we get calls from movies. They're like, "Oh yeah, we think this song would work great right here in this section of Friday the 13th where this woman gets stabbed to death."
And you're like, "Cool."
Cool. Works for you, works for me. Hey.
And then go on to your next show.
Right. I mean,
Okay.
I have no idea what's going to work for people. Seriously, I just get in. I try to make the best songs I can.
Interesting.
I just try to make the best music I can. Now, I'd be lying to you if I said that when I write a song, I don't want everybody to love it. And I do sit there when I'm writing a song, I'm like, okay, is this going to be more effective if I do it this way or that way? I do think about those things.
Right.
Because I want that. Sometimes I write songs and I imagine how people are going to react when they hear it coming through the speakers, for the first time or the 100th time, how are they going to react to that, and like I envision that whole scenario in my mind of, when I play this song live, is, I see it, like I want people, I see people's reaction in my mind when oh, this is going to kill if I write, oh my God, this hook is crazy, oh, my verse, but then to you, I'm like, I try my best.
Right. Right.
But
just a modest assessment, right?
Right, but we all do that as artists,
Right, right. And the reason why I bring up music licensing is because now,
Yeah.
especially in the circles that I travel, I deal with a lot of attorneys.
Yeah.
Attorneys are my best friends, and I do a lot of panels with them, and they all push music licensing.
Mm-hmm.
And you just said something that a lot of them would be like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you said that." He's saying, I'm not really tripping off music licensing. If it happens, it does. If it doesn't, it's all good. Whereas they're saying, in terms of ancillary income, in terms of an independent artist,
Right.
being able to develop a multiplicity of revenue streams, that they should actively look into and pursue music licensing.
You and I need to work together. I'm like, I've never heard it put that way. I'm just like, you kind of blowing my mind here right
Hey,
now.
this is what they're saying all the time, man.
Right,
You're like,
yeah.
if they call me, cool.
Yeah.
It's
I don't mean to make light of it.
Right.
It is important. It is important. But the thing that I'm trying to say, and once we make the album, yes,
yes.
we push hard.
Okay.
Once we make the album, we push. I mean,
Okay.
we're on the phone, we're following up. We got the
Promoting,
publisher.
marketing. Yeah.
But when I'm in the studio and I'm being creative, I don't think about it
I
that
hear
way.
you.
That's all I'm saying.
I see.
It doesn't mean, oh shit. I mean, I've had some fall through that I just was like, my heart was broken. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I've had a couple fall through. They're like, yeah, well, they went with so and so, and I was like, oh my God, that would have put my son through college. You know what I mean? And of course,
Gotcha.
of course.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, I the opportunities that I've gotten, luckily, have outweighed the ones that I missed.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? But when I'm creating, that's not my focus. That is not my focus.
We've arrived at the point in our interview where I asked for crash course tips. So specifically, what I want from you is 3 tips that hip hop artists can use to achieve career longevity.
Number 1 is stay inspired. I think that, you are your product. What you create has to inspire others, and I think that can't happen if you're not inspired. And you have to work to stay inspired sometimes, But if you're an inspired artist, lifelong, that will carry you for your entire career. You have to work harder than you probably ever thought you would have ever had to work. And even you have to work an amount that is probably unreasonable. You're going to say to yourself a lot, I shouldn't have to work this hard, But you will definitely have to work that hard. And you will have to cross that line as to how hard you thought you would have to work. Number 3 is surround yourself with good, positive, honest people, that believe in your vision. I can't say that enough, because you can't do everything. You can do what you do best, and that you should be doing that. You should be focused on that and let other people do what they do best and allow them to help you and push you forward.
Thank you so much for your time today, man.
My pleasure.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah,
bro.
likewise. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I'm glad I did this. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Where you been so long? Take I'm on my hot guitar. Hello, California. I'm in all the smoking yellow with a bottle of wine and a sip of Coca-Cola. No lie. With the homie bone money on trombone and Bobby on bass, big.